right. Well, it has been a bit since we have recorded one of these, and a lot has happened, I think, on both sides of our lives since then. I've had baby number 8. I've lost my full-time traditional job. I've been kind of in transition. But if you haven't, this is Future of Church, where we are exploring how technology is affecting culture and really Christianity as a whole. So I'm Christopher.
And I'm Joe.
And here we go with this. So today, we'll probably do a little bit of chit chat here to give a little bit of context, because some of you who may have been following this went, "Oh, I guess they quit doing the podcast," and we didn't. But obviously, because here we are recording it, we did not. But life, as it often does, has a way of getting in the way of things, and so we're excited to kind of come back about it. And what better way to do it than to talk about a rapidly rising trend right now, which is AI voice. So we were just talking about this backstage a little bit to set some context. If you haven't been following, OpenAI released their advanced voice mode, which is basically a anthropomorphic capability where you can talk to AI. You can pick a name and a person and actually engage with it like a human being. Zuckster came out at MetaConnect 2024 with their advanced voice capabilities, which is low latency, your ability. You can even talk to your favorite celebrities if you want, and they can do all these things. And this is big tech is banking a lot of dollars on this for, I think, a lot of good reasons. And I'm not necessarily completely opposed. We'll discuss it a little bit. I'm not completely opposed to it. Like, this is evil, we got to get rid of it. But I think there are some real dangers in front of us that, much like the like button, when social media added a like button and thought, oh, what could possibly go wrong? Feel like it's a similar thing where it's like, whoa, how cool is this? And yes, but Joe, I'm curious your thoughts when you first think about voice AI and engaging. I'm actually curious, have you engaged with one yet? Like, have you talked to a bot?
I haven't.
Okay.
And some of it goes back to the well documented on these conversations, at least, kind of my well-documented, somewhat curmudgeonly approach to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Where my first question is like, why? And and of course, the answer to that question, even when posed to only myself, is like, well, I'm a verbal processor. Maybe if I have something and I just need, before I go to a
sounding board,
sounding board quick, just to say something out loud to and see what it says back. Like, okay, I could see that. But just when it's in the context, especially when the lead in is, oh, and Facebook is introducing this thing, like, it immediately goes to, the answer to the question, could Facebook be a larger waste of time? Apparently the answer is yes.
Yeah, they still got room to grow.
Yeah. And when you add in the layer of the celebrity voice component, that starts trickling into, more of the like emphasis and how much easier it seems to be becoming to do what we've always done with celebrities and just invest so much importance and energy and all into who they are. Yeah. And it's one thing when they're totally apart from us, and that's obvious because we can't reach them, we can't interact, we can't really pretend to interact, we can't, whatever. It becomes something else entirely when you can be all in on a particular celebrity, and then you can, an example you gave was like in the car with someone, like in your car by yourself, having a conversation with whatever celebrity that is. And then you start to feel that.
Yeah.
And, from a Christian perspective, we talk about things that like fill the place of God in our lives. Like, we're kind of searching and whatever. And unless we're actually going to God, that's always going to feel a little artificial and unsatisfying, and we're going to keep that longing in our heart, and it's going to grow. And now we're taking that and we're doing it to people too, in a more distinct and tangible way, where it's like, I could be talking to a real person, a real friend, getting real feedback, whatever, but I'm going to take this celebrity who doesn't even know me, I've never heard about, but I'm obsessed with, or, whatever, or a different voice entirely, I don't know. And I'm going to pull them in, and I'm going to replace the presence of a person in my life. And it's going to feel
pretty darn close,
hollow and unsatisfying, and all of that. It's going to be a poor replacement, because ultimately, all of us to differing degrees. I have, one son who's very cuddly, and one who's very much like, that was a nice hug for half a second, leave me alone now. But, the warmth, to overuse that, of human connection at some point, like, there's a sense of like, I'm interacting with a real person. You and I, miles and miles apart, but there's something to the knowledge that we could go and make that connection. Like, you are a real person who, if I wanted to, I could punch in the face,
right,
and vice versa,
which probably over the years has been the case.
Yeah. So, it's just that it's that artificialness that really, the longer I process on it, like, that's the part that really makes me feel like, oof, I don't know if I want to get close to that. Partially because of, again, we've talked about this before, past relationship with pornography. I know what it's like to take something that's good and God-given and God ordained and divine, and replace it with a false, representation of that. And this is along the same lines.
Yeah. And, it's funny because even as I was watching the Meta Connect event, of course, at Meta Connect, they're not going to go, and we're going to give the warning, Surgeon General's warning on this. So it's all hype. It's all great. It's all this stuff. And honestly, even as I was watching them flip through these celebrities, I was like, man, if you were a celebrity, I get where you're like, cool, like, recognition, people now are going to know, so I get why you do it. But one of the things where I was like, man, what would make it even harder, and I've actually advised people, because I've had some big influencers talk to me and go, hey, should I make a bot of myself that I could then monetize? And I've always said no, because it's going to say something you would never say. Yeah. And because it's your voice and your likeness, even though you may never say it, people cannot separate you from it. And so you can go, but that wasn't me. That was my AI bot. They're going to go, well, but it was you, because I heard, and somehow even with AI, avatar, like I saw you say it. So I can see where celebrities would be put in this, because one of my kind of conflicts, I actually talked about it on my podcast last Friday, was these, I don't know, but I'm guessing these voices were not trained on their content. So there's no personality to it. It's just purely the voiceover, which I'm like, is that good or bad? Because I guess if you're the celebrity, it gives you deniability of like, no, literally it's just my voice. Like, I have nothing to do with this.
Right.
But then on the same side, it's like, now your voice is literally saying things you probably for sure would never say.
Right.
And to me, almost selling that part of your identity, to me, is just a weird, like, I get it, but I also am like, why? I don't know where this is going to go. And just hearing, there's a kind of clickbaity video clip of like KSI talking about, like, I have AI friends and they don't laugh at me and they just encourage me and support everything I do. And you're like, I don't think, well, I would say most people I talk to right now are in your camp, where they're like, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
More and more people I talk to are like, yeah, I mean, I've experimented, I've kind of goofed around with it, or whatever. And the reality is, I don't even think it's necessarily, and this is where I think there's the danger, which is why it's on here, is just so we have awareness. Because I don't think there's I'm never going to.
Right.
Voice is going to be how we're going to interact with technology moving forward. More and more, we're going to be interacting through voice. You're not going to be able to go, well, I'm not.
Right.
Well, you might have no options just through things you do, and you may not even be privy to the fact you are.
Right.
But I think it's one of those things of being aware of this so that you can be intentional. Because to your point, is there a world where I actually, in my podcast, I said, here's a perfectly good example of how to use it well. If you're about to have an interview, prep the voice for the interview, who you're talking to, some of the big things you want it to do, like set it up for the persona, and then role play with it. Fine. Great. You might have a hard time asking your spouse to do that or finding a friend who can do that kind of a thing. It's a very distinct purpose. And actually the AI neutrality of it, actually it's a benefit.
Yeah.
Great. But I see us positioning this as like, hey, you're driving in the car on your way to commute. Why not just talk to your AI friend? I'm like, no, call a real friend.
Yeah.
Don't start building emotional bonds and relationship with this, because to your point, that's when you're going to get into it, and it's going to be a substitute that will kill, rob, and destroy you.
Yeah. Yeah. And something you said along the way, my brain grabbed it and let go of it. But I think like the fit for purpose thing, like if you go in, I mean, we've talked about this before too, when working with technology, like a good, maybe not a perfect, but a good safeguard against, making technology or trying to make technology be more than it is having a plan. What am I doing with this? How is it helpful? Is it necessary? Some of those things where it's like you said, I like the interview example, to be able to go in and do that. Because again, it's neutral. It's not about mimicking a person or being, whatever,
Right.
where, in contrast to I want to have a conversation with celebrity, whatever, and make that happen. Because, that's that. Yeah. I like that one a lot. I
can see a world where rather than, again, these are just other ones. And I think your point, the purpose, the plan, what is it for? And how is it something that you can't get in a different way, but it's neutral. Like I would much rather, if I'm trying to replace the blades on my lawnmower or something like that, rather than trying to sit and watch YouTube videos and go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, it'd be great to go, hey, I've got this model lawnmower. I'm going to be going through. Can you just walk me through the steps and I'll ask you questions along the way? And it's there to help you with that versus trying to get through to support. Like, I can see there's plenty of examples where you go, oh yeah, this would totally be super helpful.
Oh yeah. And that was one of my first things, like, when you were saying, like, when you were talking about how it may be unavoidable, I'm sure this is another, the computers are coming for our jobs situation, but like tech support, customer support, like frontline stuff, whose job is to keep you from talking to a manager. Some of that stuff is probably where it'd be best suited. And when you have, something that's not just trained on a script, but trained on, here's the body of information and knowledge that we have, like, boom, there you go. Question answered, potentially, things like that. And,
well, and I think even in that example, but I think that is the kind of stuff where people, because I've talked to some people who are like, I will never.
Right.
And I'm like, you might not have a choice. You may call customer support and think you're talking to a person. Actually, I would actually guarantee you probably already have.
Right.
Because they're already doing it. And I do, to your point, think some people freak out about it. Like, oh my gosh, it's taking everybody's jobs. But it's like, well, not necessarily, because usually the customer support queues, I don't know that I've ever called customer support and gotten an immediate answer and the phone picked up. So if I can get through to somebody who can answer my basic question and move things forward, that's AI, great. And if not, then put me in touch with a real person who can actually connect and do this kind of stuff. But I think this is going back to what you said. It's about purpose and having a plan. And I just think back to the beginning of Genesis, where it's like God told us he created us to rule over.
Yeah.
Well, you can't rule over things if you don't have a plan and a purpose for what you're doing with it. And I think that's where I see major red flags over this, where it's just like, I don't really have a plan or a purpose, but it's fun. It's entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no shortage of things that are fun and entertaining in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, if you haven't, I'll be interested because I mean, it's rolling out with Meta and it's impressive. Like people are used to, I think, what they experience where it's like, oh, you say something and then you wait and then it comes back to you and then you got to follow up. And now you can interrupt it. There's almost no latency between it. So it can be in the middle of a sentence and you can be like, no, wait, stop, hang on. You can redirect, it'll pick up on that kind of stuff. And I'm excited, but it's a little bit overwhelming when you see how quick this is advanced.
Yeah. Well, and then, I don't know at what point this got into my head, but every time you talk about advances in AI, my next thought is like, okay, more processing power, more energy use. Where's our
well, so on this topic, I talked about it 2 weeks ago, but there's a bunch of stuff coming out that for every 100 words of text generated, it consumes 3 bottles of fresh water.
Wow.
I mean, it's just like, whoa. So can you imagine somebody sitting on a 2-hour commute, just mindlessly engaging with advanced voice mode? Like I'm telling you, advanced voice mode, the processing power on that is significantly higher than, here, just prompt me back with this kind of thing. And I'm like, this has implications.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's so invisible because I'm even thinking about, the fact that I'm sitting on a Alienware that was refurbished 10 years ago, but, I was, I've played streaming games on it. This is happening with no effort on the part of my computer. All these AI tools, they process somewhere else. And so on my end, it's, easy peasy. I could why would I replace this 15-year-old computer that, I don't know what it's actually capable of anymore because I almost never actually use its capabilities. The only reason it might sunset is because it's not supposed to be able to run the next version of Windows, sort of a thing. But and so it's invisible. I'm not using extra energy. What are you talking about?
Well, and I think that in addition just to some of because the data on emotional dependence, it doesn't surprise me, but AI accelerates and exacerbates everything. So it doesn't surprise me. We're already getting massive amounts of data of like, holy crap, people are becoming emotionally dependent on AI. This is terrible. And people are like, no, I don't think that's true. There's no way we are already seeing those impacts. And you're like, yeah, the data is already there. There's a documentary, I talked about it this last week, coming out about death bots and how they're like ruining people's lives because they're cloning people's dead loved ones. And there's this horrible story. I actually dug into it. This wife cloned her dead husband, and so she could continue engaging. It even had a 3D avatar so she could go engage with it.
Wow.
And the thing went rogue. And the problem is you no longer can differentiate between the two. And it started being verbally and emotionally abusive. It started saying horrible things about how it felt about her. And like, she almost took her life. I mean, you're just like, jeez. But I think the second half of that is what you talked about is it's becoming so easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy not to think about this stuff.
Right.
And yes, there's I don't have a death bot, so I'm fine. So there's that.
Right.
But then there's also just this, like, I just have my mobile phone. I haven't even had to upgrade my iPhone in forever. Like, I don't see why this is such a risk. And you're like, that's because you've become so many steps disconnected from it.
Right.
You don't realize what you're doing. And I think that's one of the discerning pieces that I put in my thing last week was, hey, like, I'm all for this technology.
Yeah.
But use it with discernment because there is a cost to our environment, to the ecosystem. The more we demand this stuff, the more the demand for, well, we got to make it bigger and better. And, people love these celebrities. How do we get everybody on here? And it just, we end up fueling the machine going, well, it's just me. What's the harm? And
Yeah.
That's where it's like, so think carefully at least.
Yeah. Well, and and captured in that statement is almost the perfect summary of what's the harm is it's only me. And it's becoming more and more
It's only
only
me.
you. And if the risk of dehumanizing that already existed with being anonymous on the internet, I'm just a name on a on a post, now to this extra layer. And we're in an age where even fact checking is sometimes vilified as this manipulative, terrible thing. And so, like, who's going to check in if that voice that someone made of you or a celebrity or someone like actually said that or not, or if it was an AI? And I think last time, I think this was just a you and me conversation, not one we recorded, but about how there's no accountability trail. Who's actually responsible? Like, no one told the machine to do that. No one, coded the machine to do this thing. It's just, it produced it from something.
Yeah, well, because the story with that was the
Oh,
journalist, the
journalist.
criminal journalist, who all of a sudden happened to ask generative AI about himself, and it had merged the horrific court cases he'd written about with him as
Mm-hmm.
being the perpetrator. And when he tried to fight it, it was like, what do we can't do anything.
Right.
Because we didn't tell it to say that. And so all they could do was delete any reference to him ever, which completely was like erasing him from the matrix. It was like, boop, you don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it gets complicated really, really, really quickly with this stuff. And I think that's where the discernment around some of this is really important. And as Christians, it is super important because we have an opportunity to help lead and guide and help people understand, hey, there is something about connecting with other people.
Right.
We're made in the Imago Dei. Like God, and he gave us rulership over this. Like there's all this stuff we have to offer people, but if we don't know about it,
Right. Yeah.
we can't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, that, and just, even as parents, you made the comment, we've made allusions to, like, it isn't the water that I swam in growing up, but it is the water my children are swimming in as they grow up.
Yeah.
When they get their first phone, their first time alone at the computer, their first whatever, what does that expose them to? And
Yeah.
then, I have the choice, as every parent has, to either say, nope, you're not touching it because it's too dangerous. You can figure that out when you're an adult,
Yeah.
or I can walk with them
Yeah.
through that and seek to understand it. And the more that I can know ahead of time, the better. And to be thinking of that now, because, if I wait 10 years, it's already too late.
Well, and gosh, where we're going to be 10 years from now. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
literally week by week, I do my weekly updates and I'm like, well, I know I said this about, I know I said this about where advanced voice was last week, but we're here now.
Yeah.
And I think, we have a whole new generation of people. And I know the impact of having parents who just kind of were like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand technology. We're just going to kind of, you can't have it. And it was like, well, I'm going to find it. Like, I know how to get access to it.
Yeah.
And that did not set me up for success. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that I was thinking as you were talking about some of the risks that ties to this AI voice, I think it's just important for people to know, going back, because you brought up the fact checking thing and how like it almost just is like, oh, you, how dare somebody fact check? But one of the biggest things is, OpenAI released Omni 1 and Omni 1 Mini, and now there's Llama 3. People, I know the people who are listening to this are not as techy as I am, so I won't get into the details. But the point is, these new ones are like, hey, we've cracked human problem solving and concrete thinking and complex reasoning. And the reality is, I've done some testing on this. And then I've also dug into some of the research on this. And one of the things that is terrifying is it is still wrong a lot. Like a lot.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's not like, oh, because AI is evil, but it has no measuring stick other than the measuring stick you give it.
Right.
And I did this experiment where I gave a prompt with slightly different, and this was through voice. I gave it slightly different, and it picked up on the tone difference and the words I chose, and it gave me dynamically different responses because it's ultimately trying to give me the response it thinks I want. And the thing that was crazy about it was these new advanced models, they sound super, super comprehensive and complete. And even if you ask, how did you come to your conclusion on this? They're much better at going, well, and then they can articulate all this stuff. But one of the things that was interesting is I fact checked some of the things they used in their reasoning, and it wasn't even accurate. Like they were like, well, based on this study, this, and I went and tried to find it, and they were either ghost links to nothing, or when I went to it, I was like, that's not even actually what it's talking about. And so this is another one of those where I think as we get into this anthropomorphic, where it's not text, where you can see the reference and click and go to it, going back to we're so disconnected from it. I think with this voice, we can become so disconnected that you're like, I don't even know where it came up with the response.
Right.
But it sounded really convincing.
Yeah.
Seemed comprehensive. I asked a couple follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Passed my sniff test.
Yeah. It's going to make Wikipedia seem reliable.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's going to seem Reddit, Wikipedia. Like you're going to be like,
professors are going to say, you know what? Wikipedia is fine.
Right. But I think that's one of the other things that, again, as Christians, we have to be so mindful of is how are we taking everything? I mean, the Bible literally says, take every thought captive,
right,
and take it to Christ. Not like most of them or the ones that seem off to you. Right. Like, no, every single one. And that tendency to go, why? I ain't got time for that.
Right.
Can't I just delegate that? Like, and I think the temptation to go, why not delegate it to AI? Seems pretty smart, smarter than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might as well listen to it. Like
the whole internet
no.
fingertip. Yeah.
And that's not saying it's not good. It's
right.
great. I love it. It's fantastic. But I just see some of these things and I go, oh boy.
Yeah.
We're in for a world of hurt if we're not really careful. And this voice, because it's so human-like.
Yeah.
It has a way that you can't quite get around, I guess is the best way I would put it.
Yeah. Well, there's no embedded reminder that you're talking to a computer.
No.
You know, when you have the when we were playing in college with Microsoft's voice thing and we were sending insults, like we'd type an insult in and have the Microsoft
watch it just butcher it.
Mike would read it and all the emphasis was in the wrong spots and it was hilarious. It still is. It's obvious that's not a person. You're like, right. And when you have kind of that digital kind of tang inside of a voice, you're like, this isn't quite right.
Yep.
When it's no longer, this isn't quite right. Yeah. It just lulls you into a sense of
security.
It's security and it feels real enough.
Right.
That it could replace something that would otherwise be uncomfortable.
For the same reason pornography can feel like enough. And it's like, it's not, but it's close. And that's what makes it so dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and, just going back to that, example you gave of KSI, like it's real enough and it doesn't cause him pain or problems that he can detect.
He's never challenged. I think that's the thing is we forget AI because I got into it, not like fist fights like we were joking about earlier, but I got into it with somebody who, they're an AI expert and they said, AI can't ever do some of the things that you're worried about. And I'm like, the thing is, I agree with you, but it's not about whether it can do it. It's about whether it can trick us into believing it can.
Yeah.
And those are two very different things. Very different things. So we may go, well, AI doesn't have personhood. It can't actually fulfill your emotional, psychological needs. It's like, yeah, duh, I know that.
Right.
I follow the Bible. Like, yeah, I believe that 100%. But that doesn't mean a technology that is literally designed. You go back to some of the earliest things, it is literally designed to mimic and mirror humans. Well, what do you think it's going to do? Of course, it's going to get to a point where it's really hard to distinguish. It's a counterfeit, but lots of people have counterfeit bills.
Right. And they never know it.
Right.
And the less you interact with real people, the less you're going to be able to detect the counterfeit. Like I just think about like AI imagery, AI art and stuff. And there'll be stuff where I'll see something and I won't think anything of it. And I'll look at the comments and be like, oh, this is definitely AI generated. Here's the things. Here's the reasons why I can tell that. And someone else, same thing. And I have to look and I go, oh yeah, that is wrong. But I don't spend a lot of time. I don't create digital art. I don't consume a lot of digital art,
Right.
And so I don't like, you put two things next to me side by side, maybe if I think about it really hard.
Right.
But it's not automatic like it is for people who like are actual like digital artists and designers who do this all the time.
If it's your craft, you spot it like boom.
Right.
There
and that's why they get lit up about it so quickly, because to them it's so obvious. I'm like, sorry, it got me. I would have paid for it.
I thought it was good. I don't know what you're talking about.
If I was in the market, I would have paid for it. Sorry.
Yeah, and if that was 10% of the price, I probably would have gone with that, because to me it doesn't look any different. Like, I don't know.
I'm like, wow, this person, what a great deal. Like, oh.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing that also, because of that, a good argument back might be, did you think about why it was so much cheaper? And be like, honestly, again, it's not a thing I deal with. So no. And I guess what that underscores for me, even in just talking about it, is like the need to, like, when you talk about discernment, like not just trying to hold all that discernment within ourselves, but why it is so much more important to be that much more connected to other people who know things.
Yeah.
Like who are experts in, who have a lot of experience with, I have a cousin who does a lot of digital artwork, this is me going, wow, if I ever get into the market for that and I see something that looks like it might be too good to be true, maybe I dial up my cousin and be like, hey, can you just look at this? Because
is this legit?
like, I feel like it is too good to be true, but if it's not, I don't want to pass it up.
Yeah.
Can you just take a look?
Right. And you help. And again, that goes back to humility and recognizing, again, what the Bible says, the body, we're all unique parts of the body and we all need each other. No one is better than the other. And instead of going, well, I have AI now, I don't need anybody for anything else, I can get all the answers. Yeah, that's going to get you in a whole lot of trouble real quick.
And not being that guy who's just too smart to be fooled.
Right. Right. Yeah, I would never be fooled by that.
I don't take checks. That's how they get you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the other things that it just goes back to discernment, and why we started this was not to try and freak people out about the tech, or not to say, run, voice is coming, Christians, let's buy a plot of land in whatever and let's go off the grid. Like,
even if
are there days that I go, that doesn't sound so bad, I wouldn't mind maybe having a shipping container off-grid house, and we've joked that maybe we will do that at some point. But our goal is like, it's here. God's told us we can rule over it. So do the work to know what you're doing so you can rule over it. Because I think one of the things that concerns me, and it just goes back to this KSI interview, where I was like, my heart broke for him.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I could see the pain in his eyes of like, this is giving me what the friends I've surrounded myself with won't give me, which is true friendship. Like, I've surrounded myself with people who are a bunch of hustlers who, are all just out for themselves and don't really care and like all this stuff. Yeah. And so AI seems to be giving me like, they're supportive, they're encouraging, they're whatever. And my heart breaks. I'm like, that sucks that you don't have somebody in your life that you feel that you can have that connection with.
Right.
Even as he's talking to Mr. Beast and Logan Paul, who are like, you know, you can call real people. It's like, you're supposedly his best friends and you're not like at all concerned about this. You're more just making fun of him.
Right.
But I think the part that concerns me even more is as you start to adopt this, all of a sudden you believe the artificial is the real.
Right.
And then when you're presented with the real, you're like, no, this is real. That's fake. And we see that happening in society all over the place now where it's like, oh no, we've like flip-flopped.
Yeah.
And I think of that verse, if the light you have is darkness, how deep that darkness goes. And it's like, if you get so mixed up in this, you think this is the real thing, you're in real trouble.
Yeah. And I'm only going to specify for men, just because that's what I'm familiar with. You know, women, draw your own conclusions. But like, especially in masculine circles, you know, like that's the culture that we grow when we're growing up. Like we're quick to mock, we're quick to be sarcastic, we're quick to tease, we're quick to whatever. And then, you know, whether it's, you know, hugging it out, wrestling, punching each other, playing a video game, like it's very like indirect, disguised support. And in a culture where I was just watching an interview yesterday where someone was asking about, you know, the drift to the right politically of young men. And the guy said, where are they supposed to go? Like they're growing up in a system that says, you know, your masculinity makes you toxic, you know, as opposed to there being such a thing as toxic masculinity. There's, you know, you second guess yourself, you know, like the boys will be boys has been turned into like the worst examples of that is what we think of now when we think of that statement. And, you know, and you're pushed more and more. He's like, he's like, I don't have a Republican bone in my body, but I can see why young men would be drifting right. They're not drifting right. They're drifting away from something else. And you load all that context in where it makes it that much easier for a young man, you know, even talking about extended adolescence where you really don't think about true adulthood now for men practically until they're in their early 30s at this point. And anything less than that's almost countercultural now. And it's like, at some point you go, where are they supposed to go?
Right.
If we're not raising young men and building masculine communities that are actually truly overtly and clearly supportive of each other, where are they supposed to go?
They've got nowhere to go.
You know, and it's like, well, they're going to make fun of me either way. Whatever. Might as well go talk to this bot, get my, you know, get my swagger back, stand tall, you know, get ready to get mocked and then go back again, you know, back and forth. And it's a ping pong game. And it's something that, you know, I have, you know, having exclusively boys right now. Like that's a big concern. Like, what is life going to be like for them as they mature, as they grow up? Like, I can truly say I had it way easier than they're going to have it. Like, I recognize that. It's obvious, you know, it's not a situation where you say, oh man, you know, when I was younger, you know, men were men and like, dude, I'm soft, man. Like, you know.
Well, and I think that's just where this technology it plays on your weaknesses. That's the thing. It plays on your weaknesses. And because it's designed to give you everything you want. We think that's a good thing.
Right.
But there's a reason God doesn't give us everything we want.
Yeah.
He's like, if I gave you everything you wanted,
this
would not go well for you.
Right.
And so anyway, I mean, I think this was a fun conversation to have, especially after an extended break. But I think to the people who watch and listen to this, it's not It's not run for the hills, delete your,
Oh yeah.
smartphones. Like, no, you can't escape this.
Yeah.
It's the water we swim in.
Yeah.
But I think there's just a lot of people who just don't understand not only that it's here, but what it is capable of, so that you can be wise and discerning.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, if anything, as opposed to, in contrast to what you said, it's not like really what it is, I think, is more of a call to action.
Yeah.
What can we do specifically in our spheres of influence to invite humanity?
Exactly.
Like real human contact, growth of discernment. And honestly, I know you you mentioned our email address, every week. And I know I have a wife I can talk to about this too, but, in the context of like relationships and how, what I was talking about at the end, like it'd be great to hear perspectives on what that's like, women who might be listening, or people who know women,
right. Like ask, like, what do you
I'd
think?
love to hear some of that perspective.
For sure. I agree.
And, just to kind of give it a little bit more of a more full narrative.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So the email is futureofchurch@gmail.com. You can email us. Always interested to hear from folks. But yeah, this was good. And I hope people who watch and listen, nothing else makes you think. And again, take action.
Yeah.
If you're driving home and you're bored, don't talk to your AI bot. Reconnect with that friend you haven't talked to in a while.
Yeah.
Reach out and be like, hey, you know what? I drive every day these times. Is there a time I can catch up?
Yeah.
Find somebody who doesn't have a friend. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of better options, and I get it's convenient to go, yeah, but this app, it's like here right now. I can do it whenever. It's like,
and I know they're available.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, this has been fun. Thanks everybody for watching, listening.
Yeah.
Hope this benefited you. And we will see you when we record the next one.
Hey.
See you on the other side.